I'm sorry, but I don't want to be an emperor. That's not my business. In this world, there's room for everyone, and the good earth is rich and can provide for everyone. The way of life can be free and beautiful, but we have lost the way. Greed has poisoned men's souls, has barricaded the world with hate. We think too much and feel too little. We think too much and feel too little. More than machinery, we need humanity. More than cleverness, we need kindness. Without these qualities, life will be violent. And all will be lost. Do not despair. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die. And the power they took from the people will return to the people. Let us all unite. Let us fight for a new world, to do away with greed. Now let us fight to free the world, to fulfill that promise. Let us all unite.
Welcome, folks, to the Corporation Nation. I'm your host, Clint Richardson, and it is Friday, January 17th, 2014. Well into the new year. My goodness. Well, I talked to Burt, my usual Thursday guest, into rejoining me today to finish our conversation from yesterday. Now, before we get to Burt, I've been writing an article here, a research article. One of my longer ones, probably, because there's so many elements to this. But when Lark from Texas was on the show as a guest, he mentioned, just sort of in passing, and kind of shocked me when he said it. And I, of course, put it down to further research. And now that I've been further researching it, I'm shocked at what I see. Just to be clear, now we've talked about the Republican and the Democratic corporations, the private associations that are non-governmental, have nothing to do with government. Okay, Republican and Democratic Party. It turns out that the Republican Party, the National Republican Committee, I guess is more proper, is actually a member of what is called the International Democrat Union. IDU.org, if you want to check it out for yourself. IDU's mission, let me say that again. Republican Party, member of International Democrat Union. Republican Party, member, International Democrat Union. What the heck does that mean? Well, IDU's mission, in its founding Declaration of Principles in the 80s, says being committed to advancing the social and political values on which democratic societies are founded, including the basic personal freedoms and human rights as defined in the UN Universal Declaration of Human Rights. To be a member of the IDU, you must agree to the principles of the IDU. Therefore, the Republican Party, by necessity and contractual obligation, must agree with IDU's mission statement and its founding Declaration of Principles that it supports the UN or United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Now, to say the least, this is disturbing to me, and I found a Gun Owners of America post, which, by the way, has an advertisement on our station, so good for them. The root, he says, quote, this is actually written by Tom DeWeese of the American Policy Center. It says the root of the IDU's, that's International Democrat Union, the root of the IDU's political agenda is Fabian socialism, which wants to blur national borders and cultures, eliminate private property and individual liberty in favor for, quote, the common good. Of course, that's perfect Agenda 21, Common Core, and everything else. The Fabians consider themselves to be a ruling elite that knows better than individuals how to run our lives. Their way is heads, government wins, tails, citizens lose. It is the worst form of tyranny. And this is the root of the IDU, and by association, apparently, the Republican Party. That answers a lot of questions about recent Republican policy decisions. Now, again, this thing was created in the 1980s, formed in 1983, actually. And it describes itself on the history. The International Democratic Union, or IDU, is working as a working association of over 80 conservative, Christian, Democrat, and like-minded political parties of the center and center-right. Formed in 1983, it provides a forum in which parties holding similar beliefs can come together and exchange views on matters of policy and organizational interest. They act together and speak with one strong voice to promote democracy and center-right policies around the globe. The founder members of the IDU included British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, then U.S. Vice President George Bush Sr., Paris Mayor and later President of France, Jacques Chirac, and German Chancellor Helmut Kohl. Actually, over 50 different countries, or I should say political parties of countries, are members of the IDU. You see, there's something very wrong here, to say the least. International Democrat Union shall consist of member parties of the Asia Pacific Democrat Union, the Caribbean Democratic Union, the Democrat Union of Africa, the European Democrat Union, or EDU, the European People's Party, the Alliance of European Conservatives and Reformists, and the Union of Latin American Parties, which have all adhered to the IDU Declaration of Principles, which means that they are steeped in Agenda 21 and United Nations dictates. It says countries can only develop their full potential if they develop recognizing the ideas of liberal democracy. Did you hear that? This is the principle. This is the principle of the IDU, of which the Republican Party is a happy member. Countries can only develop their full potential if they develop recognizing the ideals of liberal democracy. The IDU has a clear role in a modern world where today's idea in one country is tomorrow's policy in another. My God. Through the IDU, member parties can exchange policy ideas, assist each other to win the political argument, and to win elections. This has a lot to do, actually, with the Electoral College. It turns out, when I looked it up, I found out that, ironically, I probably have to say more than anything, that the countries that are all involved in this quote-unquote democracy, and of course they use words like freedom and spreading democracy and freedom and stuff like that. It turns out, and I find this to be the most ironic part about this, all the countries that these people are in power with, of course, are the countries that have no direct election of their president. In other words, for instance, the United States is a electoral college election. Of course, we have all the monarchies across the world. But for the most part, all countries involved, or at least all the major ones, including Canada, are either a monarch, an electoral college, or parliamentarily elected head of state, whether that's president, king, prime minister, all that stuff. So, isn't it ironic that the spread of democracy, which is what this is all about, actually means that the people don't get to vote for their president? That, to me, is, I don't know, it's irony with chocolate on it and whipped cream and a cherry. Isn't that a beautiful thing? I guess I just want to read a few quotes here, just to put a cap on this, because of course, both George Bush and Thatcher got up and spoke how important it is that democracy rule the world and that we spread democracy. Spread democracy. What does that mean, folks? Because let me tell you what the founding fathers said about democracy. Which actually goes completely against what this organization is about. But we'll be back with a few quotes, and we'll get to Burt.
And the men who hold start to mold a new reality, closer to the heart, closer to the heart. The blacksmith and the artist reflected in their art. They forged their creativity closer to the heart. Yes, closer to the heart.
Welcome back, folks, here in the Corporation Nation. Now, that's the Republican Party that we're talking about, member of the IDU, IDU.org, if you want to check that out for yourself. But especially the opening statements when it was first organized. Interestingly, as far as the Democratic Party, it's basically already geared towards a socialist or communitarian agenda. In fact, the IDU is actually described as a communitarian effort, although not totally communitarian. Just to give you an example of the Democratic Party, though, Chicago Democratic Socialists of America stated in its in its 1996 report entitled "New Ground 45," which is just the episode or the publishing number of New Ground, which was their publication. It was a town meeting on economic insecurity, unemployment, and survival in urban America. Over 300 people attended, including Mr. Barack Obama, candidate for the 13th Illinois Senate District. He says one of his themes for the campaign was, what does it take to create productive communities, not just consumptive communities, i.e. communitarianism? He says, well, the first step is to have better human capital development. Remember, when you put human capital development together, you have human capital, meaning to own something, and development. So in other words, human slave development, human work, capital, cow development, whatever you want to call it. By this, he meant public education, welfare reform, and workforce preparation strategy, basically Common Core and Obamacare. So later on, he says the state government can also play a role in wealth redistribution, the allocation of wages and jobs. And that was the Chicago DSA.org archives. He also signed a contract, actually, with the Marxist New Party. Candidates must be approved via the MP New Party political committee. Once approved, candidates must sign a contract with the New Party. The contract mandates that they must have a visible and active relationship with the New Party. So, I mean, basically the Democratic Party is already in the socialist realm. Now, to see that the Republican Party, the National Republican Committee, is a member of the International Democrat Union, that should scare you. Now, let me just read you a couple quotes from our founding fathers. Blah, blah, blah. You know my opinion on that. But they do have some good quotes on democracy. For instance, James Madison, so-called father of the Constitution, from the Federalist Papers, essay number 10, says democracies have ever been spectacles of turbulence and contention, have ever been found incompatible with personal security or the rights of property, and have in general been as short in their lives as they have been violent in their deaths. Alexander Hamilton said, we are a Republican government. Real liberty is never found in the despotism or the extremes of democracy. Samuel Adams said, democracy never lasts long. It soon wastes, exhausts, and murders itself. Welcome to the democracy that we call America, as we watch ourselves waste, exhaust, and murder ourselves. Isn't that just wonderful? Well, all right. Since we're on the theme of these private associations, and we've discussed before, of course, how private associations are now running America, including every single office of government, the National Government Association, the Mayor's Association International, all the Financial Officers Association, basically is who's making policy, and along with groups like American Legislative Exchange Council, who writes the laws and wines and dines Congress to pass those laws. And, of course, all the lawyers who write the uniform codes and all that. Welcome to the Corporation Nation, Mr. Burt.
Howdy, sir. How are you?
I'm good. I just find it. I find that humorous. I'll be releasing this blog entry too for those that want to view it over the weekend, probably. So interesting stuff.
No, it is, and you know what's funny is that when you read some of these old documents, like you're talking about the writings of the supposed founding fathers, it almost seems like either some of these people were writing those papers pretending to be something that they were not, or they were actually writing it purposely to mislead. Because, I mean, someone, for example, like Thomas Jefferson, there's no way he didn't know what the heck he was writing.
Yeah. Well, and plus, like I said, when you see these quotes, I mean, if you go and do a search for the quotes of the Founding Fathers against Christianity, you will be shocked at what these guys said. I mean, besides all the Masonic connections that I've uncovered and read about, the quotes, how anti-Christian they are, was incredible. And the fallacy that this is a Christian nation is unbelievable, considering those quotes are out there for anybody to read. But those were not in the Federalist Papers. The Federalist Papers, like you say, were almost like we better cover our collective butts and write, when we did this, we really meant this, even though the true meaning is, I mean, to me, is very obvious, which is to enslave the population.
Well, because, I mean, when you read their writings, you can see that they're obviously attempting to make this corporation that they're creating seem like it's something else.
Yeah.
But in fact, it's a corporation. It's a business. It's set up as a business to extract wealth.
It's got a president. It's got a board of directors.
Yeah.
Which is Congress. It's pretty obvious, really.
Yeah, I mean, it's obvious it's set up like a business. And then when we see the way the money system is run in this so-called United States, it's nothing but a system to extract wealth from the many and move it upward to the few. I mean, it's a beautiful setup. And what people don't realize is that by them allowing so many people to enjoy the benefit of buying something now and pay later, they're actually enslaving the next generation by doing that. They're enjoying the benefit now at the cost of their children later.
And yes, that's another thing I wrote extensively about is the fact that when Congress is creating the appropriations for this year, they're appropriating future tax money. The taxes that they're spending today, the appropriations they're making, will not be collected in taxation for possibly years from now, depending on which department and everything. So, yeah, I mean, it's every time you hear Congress is going to appropriate something or spend something, every time you hear a bailout, that's the banks making money. It's not us giving them money. These are all things that money is created. When money is created, that's future taxation, basically.
Yeah, so every time we go out and we use $1, okay, we're really contributing to the problem. Because
absolutely.
Read what the dollar says. It's a note. It's a promise to pay. So
well, I mean, I remember
it's a promise to pay.
I remember sitting outside, back when I was just not as aware, I guess, and didn't realize the intricacies of how many fallacies we do a day, and how many stupid things we do. I was watching the End the Fed protesters, and up there with the signs, and then they'd go across the street, break out their credit card or their Federal Reserve notes, and buy something to drink or eat. And I'm like, How can you protest the Fed while spending Federal Reserve dollars? Doesn't make sense. Nothing about us makes sense. We are nutty people, I'll tell you. We'll be back, folks. Stay with us.
Did you see the frightened ones? Did you hear the falling bombs? Did you ever wonder why we had to run for shelter when the promise of a brave new world unfurled beneath the clear blue sky?
Welcome back, folks. Here at Corporation Nation. My guest today is Burt. We're going to carry on our conversation from yesterday about this whole corporatism thing, what a corporation is, and what a corporator is, and all that stuff. Before we do, I guess let's just, before we get really into it, let's take a call. Let's take Fred in Michigan. Fred, how you doing?
Hey, Happy New Year, Clint. Glad you're there as the voice of stellar wisdom and intel. I appreciate your disclosure regarding the new chapter. I actually had from this David J. Smith, whom I refer to as a Black Regiment preacher guy out of Texas. He has what's called Newswatch magazine. It's a monthly publication. It's free for your first year. Well, 2012 happened to be the year when in one of his publications, he actually covered Obama's membership via the contract that he signed with photographs, accompanying photographs of the leadership of the New Chapter Communist Party USA in Chicago, I call it.
Yeah.
So it's quite astonishing. I often wonder, how could some guy essentially out of the ghetto of Chicago rise to such prominence out of nowhere? And that kind of begs the $64 trillion question: why hasn't the Communist Party USA been outlawed?
Well, I mean, you could ask the same question. Why do we do business with the so-called known communist country of China? Why do we do all these things? Well, it's no one ever asks, and I don't understand why. I'm right there with you. Why, if we went through so much so-called trouble to fight communism, and we had what's his name with the taking all the names and what exactly do we allow these parties in the it doesn't make sense. I don't know what to say other than the fact that people just aren't either paying attention or doing anything about it.
I think, Clint, there's something that I call the status quo consensus, and essentially it's a politically correct partisan politic because everybody has to choose a side, right? Like you have identified, pro football, professional sports. It's a way of dividing and conquering people, and they don't even know it. So here we got these competing factions that are controlled by the same international gangster-bankster cabal, and they're funding it to boot. And so knowing that we pay their salaries, and that's a contract, and everything in this commercial world is essentially operational upon contract. So the tax revenues contract, oath of office contract, and of course the revenues that are generated from their investments of their tax collections from the American Sheeple Tax, that's a contract, and we never benefit. They never share those profits. And as you have so well profiled, it's tucked away, secreted in the CAFR. And here locally, I've brought the CAFR up a dozen times to local talk show hosts and politics, and they just blow it off. There's one think tank in Michigan called the Mackinac Center, whose spokesperson told me a couple of weeks ago on a local talk show, "Oh yeah, we've covered the CAFR. Yeah, we cover the CAFR. Yeah, right."
As far as the CAFR goes, if it was covered, it would be the only thing people would be talking about for months. I mean, literally,
whatever.
if you actually covered the calf. Remember when in Oregon, I was so shocked at this. The congressman, I think, he stood up and he said, well, we're looking for, 13 million. Well, here's 4.3 billion in the CAFR. Why don't we use that? And they did. And it didn't cause much of a storm, but, I mean, there's the juxt of it. Why don't you just use money that's unappropriated, that's already there, ready to use?
Clint, was that a guy? Was that a state congressman out of where, Portland?
It was in. I remember the state was Oregon. If you type in Oregon, like CAFR, I don't know. I'd have to find it probably myself. But I remember that as being like, holy crap, that actually made TV. Wow, they actually talked about it.
I'm gonna see if I can't get you scheduled for an interview with Clyde Lewis at Ground Zero Media. He's originally from Utah, and he's got. He's syndicated throughout North America. I think he would love to interview you, and you could bring all this up to him. But
sure.
My thinking here, Clint, is knowing that whenever anyone has contracted for a so-called loan of any kind, the promissory note that's created with everyone's autograph as an authorized signature, and when Paul Harvey, the rest of the story guy, was still around, I kept hearing him say sign on the dotted line when he was promoting whatever commercial enterprise. And finally I got curious and I scoped out the signature line on a check. And
authorized signature.
And I got to thinking, I wonder if that's some sort of a demand decree for the banks that would use that as a demand for Federal Reserve currency creation. But
did you look closely at the dotted line?
Yeah, I did. I even had a woman in my same county. I told her because she's kind of an activist, and my checking account was with a credit union. It said authorized signature. Miniature dot matrix.
So wait, are you telling me those aren't dots, that it actually says authorized signature, authorized signature? These are the things that we don't notice. Every day we sign our little names on these little dotted lines on our checks. If we take a magnifying glass, we can barely read authorized signature, authorized signature. You got to ask why that's there, what that means.
Yes. So I asked this woman, hey, what about yours? She said, well, let me check because it's a state bank, state chartered bank. And she says, my gosh, it says original document. Original document. So they take that promissory note and they deposit it as a cash deposit in a brand new account in the contracting borrower's name. And then what do? They issue a bank draft against that account. So the actual literal funding source is the contracting borrower who creates the promissory note that is the actual currency that funds a loan. And then, I actually have this in a report from a retired law school professor. It's right out of the Uniform Commercial Code where it says these loan institutions are prohibited by Federal Reserve banking regs in loaning from their assets and those of their client depositors. So what are they doing? They're extorting principal interest as their prized profit from this whole process.
Yep. Everybody out there with a mortgage, there is nothing that you owe to the bank. You created the money yourself. The bank never had a balance. Bank has a zero balance. So anything you're giving it from principal and interest, it's all profit. It's amazing the way the system works. And you can verify that in the Federal Reserve monetary, what's it called? Money mechanics. And it says right there, money is created when the loan is instituted. So the money is created right there. Bank never gave you anything of its own. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
Banks, I mean, and truly, sir, this is the truth. There's only one bank, and that is the Federal Reserve.
Yeah.
Okay, all banks are like McDonald's franchises. They serve the corporations, things that the products. What is the product? $1. What is the product? Interest. What is the product? Banks are just middlemen. That's all they are. We villainize them way too much because, I mean, all they're doing is participating in the banking scheme of the main corporation, which is the United States. So it's so sad that we've fallen into this. Hey, thanks for the call, my friend. I'm not going to take any more. I'm not going to take any more calls right now. If you guys, Dick in Idaho and Steve in California, you want to call back maybe at the last half hour or so, and we'll get back to Burt here because he was kind enough to join us again. So, Burt, let's get back to this corporation thing.
Alrighty, sir.
Where should we start here again? Because we've gone over quite a bit of. It was Chief Justice Marshall again describes a corporation to be an artificial being, invisible, intangible, and existing only in contemplation of law. Remember, we said that the word "real" means of law or created by law. So your real estate, your home, actually doesn't exist. It's a fiction. The home itself exists, of course. It's a real thing, but the word "real" means artificial, created by law. We'll be back, folks. Stay with us.
Living in the street. Oh, there's a solution.
First of all, let me take just a moment to thank you for allowing me back into your homes. If this is your first time with us, let me extend a personal invitation. Let's build a happy little cloud. Let's build some happy little trees. There are no limits here. You start out by believing here. It's a your world. You're the creator. Find freedom on this canvas.
Hey, speaking of corporations,
You can do it. You can do it. You can do it. You can do it.
you know, every corporation has to put out an annual financial report. And if it's a government corporation, you have to put out a comprehensive annual financial report. And that's all districts, counties, cities, states, the federal government, and all of its individual corporations and such. You want to know some more about the CAFR. This CAFR is really, it's the most important thing, I think, out there for people to learn. I think I'll spend some time talking about it I haven't really talked about it too much. We had Walter Buran on as guest early on, but we didn't really get into the CAFR too much. And basically what it is the audited financial statements of government. So if you want to know about the Federal Reserve and you want to see its audited financial statements, yes, it's audit. Go to its 500 or 600 page comprehensive annual financial report required by law. Can't get around it. So let's talk about that. I was thinking maybe I'll pull up the Austin city CAFR, maybe the county as well, and go over that since it seems to be such a wealthy town and so Masonic. So join me Monday for that. Maybe we'll do a few days on the CAFRs because it's not an easy subject. It's certainly not something you can cover in an hour. As my movies should probably suggest. All right, so Burt, this corporation thing. So the corporation is an artificial being, invisible, intangible, and existing only in contemplation of law. That's an interesting way of saying it, isn't it? Because it's as if law can contemplate. It's as if law is a living being, but of course we know it's not. Right? Being a mere creature of law. It's not a creature. It doesn't live. It's not alive. It possesses only those properties which the charter of its creation confers upon it, either expressly or as incidental to its very existence. It's fake. It doesn't exist. It's the Matrix.
Right. So what I really wish people to kind of comprehend here and then try to pass on to other people, because it's so funny. It's like today I was in school talking to my boys' teacher because they're doing a little project in school, which I think is kind of cool. They're kind of set up like they're going to have jobs, they're going to set up businesses, and they have little things that they're making that they're going to sell. But immediately you came to mind, talking about this core thing. And I was like, well, the idea is kind of okay because they're teaching about setting up a business and all these kind of things and hiring people to work for you and all that. But then at the same time, they're like, oh, but you got to have a business license to set up your business. And then when you hire people, you got to do a background check on them. So you got to have Social Security number. You got to have fingerprints so you can find out if you're a criminal, and all these different things that, he's in third grade. So they're starting them at this very young age, already trying to get them to see that when someone asks you for some of this information, you just give it because that's just the way things work. And that's how they get your consent. That's how these corporations get you to act as a corporator, by getting your consent somewhere along the way. And, you give them an inch and they'll take a mile. And that's what we have to remember.
And I've also realized, especially lately, that the whole entertainment industry, especially comedy, especially those horrible comedians out there, it's all a way of garnishing familiarity with tyranny. It's a way of getting consent to things. Yeah, I used George Carlin as a great example. I just read a thing about George Carlin, and I said, if you actually laugh at George Carlin when he's talking about politics, then you are not getting it, man. You are not awake to anything. If you laugh at George Carlin, you're missing the whole darn point of what he's saying. I don't find George Carlin funny at all anymore. Nothing he says amuses me. In fact, I find when I look at his eyes, same thing with what's his name. I find that he's looking at me. He's looking at the audience in contempt, total and utter contempt, because they're actually laughing at him as he's telling them they're enslaved, as he's telling them they have no rights, as he's telling people that they're militarily occupied. He's actually telling that to people, and they're laughing, and the laughter is nervous. The laughter is a lot of it's laugh tracks, actually. So it's just the whole thing is set up to garner consent, and humor about reality is a great way to do it. What is the Johnny Carson show? What is the Tonight Show? Why are they there? Why is it funny when they talk about the fact that we're slaves? And can you imagine a bunch of African people who've been taken from Africa, put over here? They're in chains and they're slaves, and the plantation owners, which were the founding fathers. Can you imagine that they would actually put a comedian, a white comedian, up there in front of them and joke about their slavery?
Yeah, and get them to laugh.
You're in chains. I mean, it's the same thing. What an amazing system they've got to garner consent.
And the funny thing is that the more you understand how a corporation, just any corporation, operates, and then you begin to compare it to the way the so-called governments operate, then you begin to see how you fit into it, and then you begin to see that it's all based on consent. It's all based on consent, but consent alone is not enough. You need consent, and you need a high degree of ignorance to go along with it, because you need the ignorance to allow the people to give their consent without knowing, and then you need a high degree of ignorance in the people who are going to enforce the privileges once they get your consent.
Well, and I'll say it again, what we're talking about all the time is you need a foreign language. You need a language that is hidden. You need literally a secret society of law professionals, law writers and law. That's what you need. You need to actually have done what they've done, which is to create a whole language that is separate and opposite of the language that's used in everyday, conversation. And that, of all the moves these guys have made, that is it. I mean, that did it, because, like you said, you almost have to be schizophrenic to actually be able to talk about this in first person and go back and forth between the two languages, because the two words can mean exactly the opposite thing. So that was probably the most important aspect of this, was just to create this secretive language, the law society.
Yeah, and when you hear, all these cases from the Supreme Court, and they're constantly saying, "Oh, yeah, but the person does not have a right to do this, but the person does have a right to this, and we owe that person this protection and that protection." What are they talking about? They're talking about a fictional individual within the corporation. They're not talking about real people. And that is so difficult to comprehend. I mean, it's a real mind job.
It is, and yet at the same time, it's become perfectly clear that, and you know, I think it's safe to say that when you go to DMV and we go to some of these government offices, they treat you exactly as what government considers you, which is just a one of the cattle that needs to be rebranded with a new license or needs his something done, and they treat you like that. They treat you with contempt because I don't think they know or understand why they're treating you with such contempt. It's just government. It's just the nature of government.
And that's why it's crucial to understand some of these basics of how these people operate, so that when you're dealing with them, instead of you going in there and making affirmation, just ask them, hey, am I here as a cat? Am I here as a dog? What am I here as? Am I here as a cow? As a horse? As a mule? Please tell me who I am in your system so that I can then communicate from the proper perspective. Because when you show up in court and they don't tell you your status, how are you supposed to defend yourself? If you're there to defend yourself as a king, your defense is going to be a lot different than if you show up as a servant. But someone needs to tell you who you are. And you never want to fall into the trap of defining yourself. They're supposed to do that for you because they're the ones bringing the charges against you.
Sorry, man. I cut out there for a second.
So it's important that we understand this terminology.
All right, folks, we'll be back. Stay with us.
Soldiers, don't give yourselves to brutes. Men who despise you, enslave you, tell you what to do, what to think, and what to feel. Who drill you, diet you, treat you like cattle. Don't give yourselves to these unnatural men. Machine men with machine minds and machine hearts. You are not machines. You are men. You, the people, have the power to make this life free and beautiful. Let us use that power to make this life a wonderful adventure. Let us all unite. Let us fight for a new world to do away with greed. A world where science and progress will lead to all men's happiness. Do not despair. The hate of men will pass and dictators die. And the power they took from the people will return to the people. Let us all unite.
Corporation Nation. We're talking about corporations, ironically. Friday is January 17th. We'll take some phone calls in the last half hour. As far as corporation, it says it is chiefly for the purpose of clothing bodies of men. In secession, with these qualities and capacities, the corporations were invented. What is it talking about? Well, immortality, we covered yesterday. A very important part of corporations that can be passed on, especially the corporation's soul can be passed on to the next soul, if you will. That's S-O-L-E. But also, it allows a group of people or a group of entities to be one person or to act as one person. And that's the importance of incorporating a nation, because now we're all acting as one person. Of course, it's not us or our actions. It's our lack of action against these people who are acting on our behalf. But trust me when I say the President of the United States Corporation is acting as us in one person, if that makes sense. I'm saying that right. Let's go down with that understanding, of course. Let's go down. What is incorporation? The distinction, let's see, incorporation is the act by which a corporation is created. By corporation is meant the body thus created. Now, the word corporation actually comes from the old Rome, which basically incorporation meant to put an artificial veil of clothing upon somebody. And that was their way of saying an artificial person, basically. Incorporation under civil law, again, this is Bouvier's Law Dictionary, the union of one domain to another. Now that's, Burt, a very important word. Incorporation in the civil law, again, what is civil but artificial or unnatural, not under natural law. The union of one domain to another. That is a very important definition. Why don't you tell us about what domain is, or if you want to read it there?
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna read the definition of domain here, but this is what you kind of want to keep in mind. When you move from one domain to the other, at least in this commercial system, what you are doing is actually engaging in the transfer of your wealth, something that is real. You're taking it out of that domain of reality and you're having it represented into something unreal, which is their world, which then allows them to take your real property. Okay, I'm using that term loosely, but your real thing that belongs to you, and now it becomes personal or realty property, which is something fictional, and because it's fictional, it can then be converted into something else. What that else is now out of your control because it's in their domain, and it can now be converted and reconverted into whatever their particular fictional law happens to allow.
Sure, they can call a cat a dog if they want in that realm. Now, what he's talking about here, and you included these in your paper here, corporeal and incorporeal. Corporeal property in civil law, that which consists of such subjects that are palpable. In other words, you can see it, you can touch it, you can taste it. In the common law, to signify the same thing as property in possession. Differs from incorporeal property, which consists of, let's see here, incorporeal property, incorporeal, not consisting of matter. Right?
Totally fictional.
So, Right. Things incorporeal are those which are not the object of sense. Doesn't make any sense at all, if you ask me. Which cannot be seen or felt, but which we can easily conceive in the understanding as rights, actions, successions, easements, and the like. Incorporeal hereditament is title or estates, a right of issuing out of or annexed unto thing. The existence is merely in idea and abstracted contemplation, though their efforts and profits may be frequently the objects of our bodily senses. What is that saying? There is no debt, and yet that's all we freaking worry about. There is no mortgage. There is no real estate. None of it actually exists, and yet it is frequently the object of our bodily senses, of our stress, of our worry, of our concern, and yet it's all incorporeal. It does not exist. It does not consist of matter. This is everything involving government, surprisingly. Every aspect of government is incorporeal. Yes, there's buildings. Those are the corporeal aspect. But the building is not the government. Okay, those buildings house the piece of paper that is the government. It's an idea. It's a thought. So, incorporeal property is that which consists in legal right merely. That's it. Nothing else. What the heck is a legal right? You know, does it exist if I don't agree that it's a legal right? I mean, just because it says on paper that it's a legal right, you have the legal right to take my own property? So, gosh, I mean, all right, well, let's go back to domain because very important. Again, incorporation in the civil law is the union of one domain to another. Go ahead, Burt.
Okay, so reading the definition of domain, it says it signifies sometimes dominion Okay, so dominion, means to dominate.
Yeah.
Territory, govern. Sometimes possession, estate, and sometimes land about the mansion house of the Lord. Now, remember, land does not mean soil, does not mean earth. Land is also a fictional location in the commercial world. There is no land that you can touch and feel. It only exists in fiction.
So what do we call that then? Land? Is that the mineral estate? Is that you call it soil? I didn't actually know that.
Yeah, land is a commercial value. It's a commercial instrument.
Remember, so is man.
Yeah, every term used in the legal world has a commercial value to it. If it doesn't have a commercial value to it, it's void. It's expired. Okay? So then it moves on. It says, by domain is also understood the right to dispose at our pleasure of what belongs to us. Now, our pleasure doesn't include you and I.
Yeah,
and what belongs to us.
It's not the happy-go-lucky feeling that they're talking about.
Yeah, and what belongs to us does not include you and I.
You could say the word
them.
You could say the word pleasure means right.
Yes, pleasure is every time you see anything along the right of enjoyment, pleasure, they're talking about a duty,
an entitlement or a duty. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm disgusted by this. I'm so sick and tired of breaking this down. It takes so much time to understand this stuff, and I'm frankly sick of it. I'm disgusted by our system and how we've fallen prey to it. We'll be back, folks, to break it down even more. Stay tuned.
He's a rebel and a runner. He's a signal turning green. He's a restless young romantic, wants to run the big machine. He's got a problem with his poisons, but we'll find a cure. He's cleaning up the systems to keep his nature pure.
All right, folks, welcome back to the Corporation Nation. Word of the day. I always like to bring up words that have nothing to do with anything. The word doom, D-O-O-M. It's kind of a funny word. You might want to look it up, and you can look it up online as well. But I'm in my big green book, Webster's 1828. Doom. This is so funny. This is how arrogant and you understand who these people think they are. These judges, the attorneys in black robes, the muumuus. They this is how powerful they think are. This is where their power comes from. It's of God. They believe they are looking at you in the judgment of God. What is the word doom? D-O-O-M. To deem. Doom is the root of deem, which seems to coincide also with esteem, and perhaps with the root of condemn. What's the definition? To judge. Yeah, that's right. Doom is to judge. To be doomed is to be adjudged, sentenced, condemned, destined, or fated. Dooming is judging, sentencing, condemning, and destining. They actually think they are so powerful. It's so funny. Judgment, judicial sentence. Condemnation, sentence, decree, determination affecting the fate or future state of another. Ruin, destruction. And that is what they're doing, right? They're ruining somebody's life, especially someone who hasn't actually committed a crime, just so they can they can keep the game of commerce rolling, just so they can fill up their investment accounts with all the monies that they bring in, all the charges that they find. Oh my God. They actually believe that they are of a higher power, that they actually believe that they are above God. And that just
well, let me add something to what you just said. So doom is to be judged, and if you are doomed or judged, it's because you're obviously not doing something that you should be doing. So whatever it is that you are doing, it's worthy of you being doomed, right? So you're doing something wrong. Now, if we look at the preamble of the, almighty Constitution that everybody worships, and literally people worship this thing. I mean, what does it say? What is the purpose of this Constitution? It says, we the people of the United States, in order to form a more what? A more perfect union. So if the union is perfect and you deviate from perfection, you are doomed. There you go. It's right in the preamble.
Nice. Very nice. All right. Well, let's get back to domain. By domain is also understood a right to dispose at our pleasure. Again, pleasure means that we have a privilege as a tenant of whatever it is that quote unquote belongs to us. You want to continue from there?
Mm-hmm. So it says a distinction has been made between property and domain. The former is said to be that quality which is conceived to be in the thing itself, considered as belonging to such or such person exclusively of all others.
So, in other words, property is a tangible thing, either in and of itself or as something that belongs to a person. So it's the real deal.
Well, but if they're talking about a person, if it belongs to a person, it's already fictional. Whenever the word person is included in there, you're already talking about fiction.
But I think what it's saying here is that if I look at if I were to be a homeowner, good luck with that in my life. If I were to actually look at my home, I would say that's the property. The home is the property, and all the paperwork and every borders and all that is the domain, because the domain is not. Like it says, it's not a quality. In other words, it's not something tangible or something you can touch, or feel. Now, is that is the word property a legal term in this sense? I don't know if it's saying that or not.
Yeah, when you're saying the word property, they're talking about you whatever it is that you had has already entered a different domain. So it has entered a domain as something else. So whatever that property was, whatever they're considering property, it was something that was already in another domain, and now it's entering this other new domain, which is the fictional world. So it's a quality which is conceived to be in the thing itself. So whatever the thing is has now gained a new quality,
right,
that qualifies it to enter into another dimension.
So by domain, it says, by the later term, which is domain, is understood that right which the owner has of disposing of the thing. Hence, domain and property are said to be correlative terms. One is the active right to dispose, the other a passive quality which follows the thing and places it at the disposition of the owner.
Mm-hmm. And in legal world, owner is not what we think. An owner is not someone that has the thing belonging to them. It means one who is entitled to the management of the property, or one who is or one who is entitled to enjoy the property.
It's a very interesting word, this domain, because literally means it's not a thing. It's, again, the right to dispose of a thing, but it's the action, not the thing. What a bizarre concept.
Yeah, so when you're in this new domain, you can now look at the thing, but you're not looking at the thing, you're looking at the qualities that the thing represents. So what are these qualities? These qualities are its commercial qualities, its commercial value, its exchangeable value, its ability to be represented by what? By fictional money. So everything has to be converted out of the real domain, the real world, and then transferred into something else. I mean, one good example is if you have a $50 gold coin, that is real gold. But if it has a $50 stamp on it, now it has gained a different kind of quality, a $50 quality. And when you bring that $50 coin to a bank, do you think they're going to give you $2,000 for it? No, they'll only give you $50 because that's the only quality that they see. They cannot see any other quality of that gold coin. It's just a $50 piece.
And when, in the near future, your babies will get stamped on them a barcode or get implanted a little chip, that will be what your baby is. And your domain or right to dispose of that baby will be dictated for you. Welcome to the New World Order. We'll be back.
Scientists have been battling to understand what this unappealing object is all about. What the object is all about.
Information in the form of energy streams in simultaneously through all of our sensory systems in the form of energy. And then it explodes into this enormous collage of what this present moment.
Oh, good times. Always fun with Burt. Hey, Burt, I wanted to give you the opportunity. We haven't actually talked about your all your stuff that you're doing, but Burt's website is onlyfreeman.com, and this is the perfect time to talk about your two little research projects that you did. One of them on firearms, or arms, not firearms, and the other one on marijuana, because we're talking about creating a fictional character, a fictional a domain, if you will, a fictional entity, a fictional person, something artificial, and calling your arm a firearm. The only way that government can regulate arms is if you admit and create a firearm, a legal fiction of your gun. You can have all the guns you want in the world, and the police can be looking at them, and you can say, "No, sir, I have no firearms. None of these are registered as firearms. They are arms, so go away." Tell people how they can actually order or get those, download those.
Yeah, well, people go to the website, and I'm doing this training sessions, I guess you could call them, but it's really just an exchange of information and attempting to clarify these points. Like, for example, I think we've already spent somewhere around 8 to 10 hours just simply discussing the difference and what non-sui juris is and what sui juris is. And by signing on to the website, you actually then get access to those two papers that I put together, and I'm actually going to be putting a few others together. But here's the thing: is that like Clint just said, they will take something that is real, and then they represent it into something unreal, which then can be regulated to no end in the legal world.
So you've got the corporeal rifle or handgun or whatever that gets represented as an incorporeal, something that has no matter, something that can't be touched, what's called a firearm, a legal status. Almost the same thing as putting an artificial person on a natural man.
Yeah, I mean, there was actually several situations during Katrina in the New Orleans area where the cops were ordered to confiscate all firearms. And there were actually people who were leaving the city, just trying to get the hell out of there. And one guy actually had cops approach his car, and they could see that there were actually guns, arms, in the back of the seat. And they asked him, "Sir, do you have any firearms in your vehicle?" And the guy said yes. They reached in, grabbed his rifles, grabbed his guns, and proceeded to his rifles to break the butt off of them by slamming the rifle into the concrete.
But they asked first, even though they could see him clearly, to verify, just like asking for a driver's license, to verify that you're a driver and not a traveler. Same thing.
Yeah. So when the cop approaches you through the window and says, "Sir," very nicely, "may I see your driver's license, registration, and proof of insurance?" And then you're like, "Sure, sir, here it is." "All right, now, do you know you were doing 55 and a 45? Do you know you were violating the law?"
Now that he knows he's got you, now that he knows you're under his jurisdiction. Let's take some calls. Dick from Idaho, who actually dropped earlier because we told you to wait. Dick, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I appreciate your program. Your last comment was a perfect lead-in to my question. And but before I ask the question, just want to let you know that I have fond memories listening to your dad broadcasting on the local football games here in Idaho Falls.
What's that now?
I said I have fond memories of your father broadcasting local football games.
My father?
Yeah, wasn't he a broadcaster?
No, my father was a pilot, or actually he was a navigator in the Air Force.
Was it his father?
And he retired? I don't think so. I don't know where you got that.
Well, maybe I got the wrong Clint Richardson. Anyway, my question is, I'm trying to reduce my corporate footprint, and so I obtained a international driver's permit, the 1949 UN permit, and my question is not renewing my driver's license enough, or do I need to revoke, rescind, or whatever this contract via a letter?
Do you want to keep that international license, or you want to get rid of it?
No, I'm going to keep the international permit. I'm getting rid of my license, my driver's license.
Yeah, well, you see, I know other people that have tried to do things like that, and see the driver's license itself is not the problem. The problem is that if you are on the road and they can show that you are, you could just be walking on the road. You don't even have to be in a car. If you're walking on the road and they can show that you are in fact a corporator of their corporation, then you're bound by their regulations. So what's that?
How are they going to show that I'm a corporator if I don't have a driver's license?
Well, they're good at extracting that kind of information from people. And most people willingly admit that they're a corporator in the system.
Most people will definitely admit that, oh, sure, I'm a U.S. citizen. Well, that gets you right there.
Yeah, and then if you don't talk, they'll take you to the police station, run your fingerprints, say, "Ha! You are Mr. Johnson. Hey, how are you doing, Mr. Johnson?"
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I understand the. You're going to have to do a little more footwork, like.
Well, let me just get to the point here. Is that the bottom line is this: if you have any kind of a birth certificate, naturalization certificate, or anything along those lines which gives birth or actually breathes life into this entity, and actually I found a case where they use that expression, they breathe life into the entity, then you're in the system. And of course, if you have a Social Security number or any of those things, that makes you solidly into their system, and that's what they're going to try to use to get you. So unless those very basic documents have been voided out, and I'm in the process of getting all their system, their laws that backs up the process for getting rid of that. I will be putting that on my website so that people can see.
And that's something else that I'm going to go through too. Now, I know that the first step is likely, from all the information that I've gathered. Talking to Bo the other day was interesting as well. But I think the first thing that I'm going to do is a little form from the Social Security office called SSA-521. And that, interestingly, because it's the actual application for Social Security that gets monetized and put into the trust and all that. It's not the actual, the social, everything afterwards happens because of the application. And what this form does, again, it's SSA-521. What that actually does is it nullifies the original application. It is a request to get rid of, to nullify, to make as if it doesn't exist, the original application. What that does is, on that I will say, hey, what other reason do you need than I wasn't old enough to contract with you? That's fraud, you bastards.
Yeah, and see, here's the problem. If you hold a Social Security number, if you hold a birth certificate number, because I can prove to everybody out there that your birth certificate makes you, in fact, an employee of the United States Corporation, and that's in Title V of the U.S.
What's your
Code.
website again?
Onlyfreeman.com.
Onlyfreemen.com.
Yeah, and as long as your identity is tied with being a citizen, employee, corporate, or whatever of the United States, if you attempt to do anything to bypass the requirements of the driver's license or any other kind of license that they decide to create out of thin air without you even knowing, you're operating illegally. And anyone that tells you to do anything outside of that capacity is contributing to an illegal act.
And remember, these guys are acting illegally too. And some of them know it. Some of them thrive on the power that they have to tase you or to harm you. So, it's one thing to listen to all these people out there, gurus and all that. It's another thing to actually do it in practice. And in practice, you're probably going to get your head beat and go to jail unless you actually can separate yourself from that. So we'll be back, folks. Stay with us.
Is this real? Or is this just right? The world is like a ride. You think it's real? It's just right. We can change it anytime we want. It's only a choice between fear and love. The world is like a ride. You think it's real? It's just right. We can change it anytime we want. It's only a choice between fear and love.
You made me, of course, go look it up. So I looked up the word life. Why would anybody in their right mind look up the word life in a dictionary unless you're trying to figure out the difference between languages? And it says, it says up here, it says the living form, real, person, or state in opposition to a copy. As a picture is taken from the life, the description from the life. It also says a person. A living being, usually or always a human being. So, in fact, the word life is a person. So when you say it breathes life into, what they really mean is it breathes personhood, artificial personhood. Isn't that... These guys disgust me with their words. I hate them.
You have to realize that when we're in the fictional world, real language is not the same. It's something else.
Just crazy. Dick, are you still there? Oh, I think we lost Dick. Let's take Sean in Brooklyn.
Yes, sir.
How you doing, sir?
Hello, gentlemen. I really am enjoying your on-air rapport. at first it was awkward and a little choppy, but now it's really getting very fluid, and it's terrific.
Thanks, man.
I'm jealous of your big green book, Clint.
I know, it's pretty wonderful. It is online, most of it anyway. If you type in Webster's 1828 and then the word you're looking for, it'll generally come up. Some of them don't, but
that's why I'm jealous, because I'm losing my eyesight squinting at this PDF copy.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I have to give thanks too. So one of the listeners actually sent this to me because I just happened to mention that if someone wanted to, buy me a Christmas gift, this would be it. Which is pretty pathetic if you ask me for things that I desire, I guess. But
Clint, you deserve it. Take the compliment.
Yeah. What can we do for you, sir?
When you were talking about owner sounded like a function of being a trustee, but it also sounded like being an agent. And I didn't know that.
Well, yeah, I think Burt probably can answer this better. I think technically, really, there are no owners of anything if it's in the law, right? The owner of everything is basically government, right?
Especially after 1933, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, don't get too stuck on specific point in history, because the truth is, this corporation existed before it was even conceived. Okay, remember the colonies were in fact little corporations, and then they got this fictional independence from the king, which was another corporation, and then they became their own corporation under the United States of America, under the Articles of Confederation. And then out of that corporation, they created a new corporation known as the United States of America under the Constitution.
Didn't this really start, Burt, with the Pope back in the 12th century?
Well, if you want to take this even further back in history, you can keep going. So that's why I'm saying that you don't want to get stuck too much on the history. What you want to understand is that today we're in a corporation, okay? And that's what's important, and that we cannot be forced to participate in a corporation, no different than you can be forced into participating with Walmart. So it's all under consent. But the thing is that the people carrying the guns, acting as the Walmart security guards, they believe that they have the power to beat you into submission, and that's not true.
If you actually go and look up the word usufruct, I think that's the best way of explaining what we have. The usufruct is defined as the temporary use and enjoyment. Now, use and enjoyment, again, those are privileges. Those aren't actually ownership. Temporary use and enjoyment of lands or tenements, or the right of receiving the fruits and profits of lands or other things, without having the right to alienate or change the actual property. So an example of that is, say you want to add on to your home. Well, unfortunately, it's not your home. It's not your property, so you cannot change or alienate. In other words, you can't put a lien on it without permission from government, because it's government's property. Is basically how that works. So
well,
usufruct.
Same thing with your children.
Yeah.
Your children now become property, become something that belongs to the state. That's why if you don't put your kid in their school system where they can be indoctrinated, then now you're violating the law. Their law, man's law, legislative law. Does that help any?
I love to hear it. No matter how many times you repeat it, it needs to be repeated. The thing that I really wanted to share, I mean, I've got lots of questions, but I can ask those at some other point. What's fresh in my mind is, I think it was last night, Clint, you were making another reference to the Matrix, the first one.
Yeah.
The more that I think about that, I think about I was taught about good and evil within the context of Lucifer being prince of this earth, never creating anything, counterfeiting, imitating, copying everything, the great deceiver. And this idea that we are compelled, captured, and owned as a result of word magic. And I keep on thinking of that Agent Smith in The Matrix. 1 minute, there's a woman. There's a secretary. And then a moment later, she becomes Agent Smith. And I think that through this word magic, this spelling of a new reality, that's one of the things that's the most difficult, at least for me, to explain to people I know. That at any given moment, we can, instead of having one foot in the matrix, we are completely like caught on the edge of a funnel and drawn into the center of it. We can't get out. And
here's one thing. Now, you're talking about good and evil. Now, we can probably all agree that, a certain degree of greed is evil, okay? But if we look at this from our own point of life, from our own, experiences in our own very existence in this matrix, when we cannot wait 5 years to save the money to go and buy a brand new car and we finance it, are we not operating under greed?
Well, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so who are we to blame someone else for acting like greed when we're too greedy and cannot wait 5 years to save the money to go buy it completely? No, we have to finance it and then enhance the problem by financing. Because every time we enter into a financial agreement, we're making the next guy that goes to finance 10 times worse because we just lowered the value of that currency.
Well, I disagree with you in part. There's an overwhelming, multidimensional layer of ignorance laying over everybody. I mean, look how far you two have come. And still, there are all of these questions. How exactly have they worked this out? It is amazing.
Well, here's the thing. They have made it easy for you to exercise greed for their benefit.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
I mean, that's what it is, and that's how they take advantage of our ignorance.
They've
and they
almost
get us
made
to
it
violate our own law.
Yeah, but Bert, at the same time, they create a system where this is for many people, the only alternative is to go into debt, unrealizing what the matrix is.
Well, so, I disagree with that.
Okay. Well,
they give the appearance that it's the only way out, but it's not.
The appearance of overpopulation, the appearance that there's no land out there, the appearance that there's, it's all, I mean, people nowadays, what they should be doing is going and claiming land on the BLM, because that's what they're there for, is to manage the land.
People believe they cannot live without TV. I mean, come on.
You are right. Maybe I'm just trying to make excuses for people. I don't know why I want to do that. I was brought up not to go into debt.
Into a contract. By the way, the word evil is actually defined in Black's Law Dictionary as going or conspiring against government, whether it's acting constitutionally or unconstitutionally. That is how government defines the word evil. Because remember, government took the place of God, so you can't really be evil to God when you're dealing with government because government is godless. Oh! Thanks, Bert, for joining me. Again, Monday, we'll cover the Kafirs and probably take that through the week. Take care.